didn't know if it was going to work, but I knew that I loved it like a lot, and I couldn't see myself going back.
Hey, thanks for being here. My name is Leah. In this podcast, you'll get a different take on the world of founders, startups, and innovation. I was a broadcaster for 23 years, not a business exec, so it was a leap to go from TV to VC. But since I've been in this sector, I'm repeatedly amazed by the founders who put everything on the line and just start a company from nothing. Why would they do this? In this podcast, we'll find out. Joining me today is Alex Todorovic, co-founder and CEO of Arbor, a data science platform that helps companies improve and showcase the sustainability of their products. So tell me how you first decided to become an entrepreneur.
We have to go really way back.
This is good. We got lots of time.
So the first thing I did was... out of high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I think it's a classic problem for everybody. I didn't think that I had the ability or marks to go through university, so I went into, this isn't the knock at SAIT, but I went to SAIT because it was easier to get in.
Sure.
I took aircraft maintenance engineering, so I worked on airplanes. I fixed airplanes.
Oh.
And I did that, so that course was 2 years, and I worked for 2 years for a private company here in Calgary. It was cool, but I also hated it.
Right.
And I had one of those classic moments where you wake up in the morning and you're thinking, what if the next 10 years looks like this?
Right.
How am I going to feel?
Right.
And I had an internal panic, and then that was my answer.
No kidding. So you knew you had to change something and fast.
Yes, I had to get out of that. I've pretty much grown up on a computer since the age of 8, basically. Right. I remember when I was 11 or 12, we had our family computer. The CD drive wasn't working, so I took the computer apart. My parents freaked out, but I ended up fixing it and all this stuff. And so,
you were how old when you did this?
12, I think.
Oh my gosh.
And so then I was looking at programs. I thought, okay, maybe I should check out university. I like computers. I like science, computer science.
Amazing how that comes
Landed
together.
on that. And then started out, I think, in 2014. And I've always, I've had jobs for generally bigger companies, and it always felt very unfulfilling. Because I don't know, I would always have ideas I would see inefficiencies in places, or I would see things that we could do to make a bigger impact in my role or whatever it was. And all the times when I would kind of talk about these things, it'd be, yeah, we don't do that here. We just do as you're told, do the same thing we've been doing for the last X amount of years. We don't need to change.
Right. How'd you feel about that?
It sucks the life out of you because you're like, what's the point, basically? Yeah. I'm just here to grind away, don't ask any questions, don't make any changes, punch in, punch out. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Right. I know a lot of people that use work as a means to an end, which is get yourself financial stability so you can do the things that you enjoy. Right. That's kind of the process. For me, doing the thing that I enjoy, it means in my career is a big part of it.
Yes.
And so even when I worked at the University of Calgary towards the end of my degree, I was working at an entrepreneurial space at the Hunter Hub.
Right.
And so I spent about 2.5 years there as the software person, and I met a lot of founders and people in the ecosystem. That's how I met James. That's how I met Andrew. And I was kind of looking at it and thinking to myself, I could do this.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane, but at the same time, it feels something's pulling me. I don't need to start tomorrow making a big empire of a company. I just need to start doing things that I like, and maybe it'll push me in that direction.
Right.
And then so I started entering hackathons with some friends. I started taking more classes at university towards the end of my degree, which were focused around the business aspect of software. So like a web design course, an app development course. And actually in that specific app development course, I met one of my co-founders, Ben. And then through Ben, I met his brother, Danny. And then Abdullah came along the picture shortly afterwards. And we all kind of worked together really well and clicked really well. And while I was also kind of absorbing a lot of this entrepreneurial energy and understanding and all these founders I was talking to, it all kind of just clicked at the same time. And we were all on the same page of, we don't want to work for anybody else. Let's just see what it's like to make a company.
Right.
And I remember that one day where we literally just sat down, went on the Government of Canada website. How do you incorporate a company? We went on the Canadian website. We filled out all the information. And $150 later, we had a company.
Wow. Did you know then it was going to be Arbor?
No.
No.
At that point in time, we were actually just creating a software services company. So just like developing stuff for other people.
Okay.
And with the thought that this was kind of a practice for us of figuring out how to run a company, how to do like the financials, the marketing, all that stuff, and how to essentially do business, because all we've been learning has been the hard skills of software, basically. Right. But the goal was that at some point we would spin out of this an actual company where we make a product and sell the product.
Okay.
And that's kind of the thinking, was that it was supposed to be a natural progression, basically.
Oh, cool. That sounds pretty straightforward, actually, and well planned out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not so much?
Well, it kind of was. It's just, I don't know, I guess it's surprising. It was surprising that we thought it out that well, because it just kind of felt like it was a side project.
Right.
But the more time we put into it and the more we were going through these different hackathons and we were winning stuff, just got super addicting. And all of a sudden I ended up, it was the right timing after I put together this thing called Tech Fest at U of C. The whole goal was to bring together students in tech in Calgary with companies who are hiring for tech in Calgary to kind of strengthen the ecosystem.
Right.
Event went off really, really well, and I thought to myself, this is my mic drop moment. I'm going to just quit my job at the UFC and start doing this company full time, basically.
Wow. So that's the moment, I think, that I'm really curious about. Like, how do you make that leap? How do you decide, I'm going to do this? And of course, the question is, why would you do that?
Yeah, you have to be kind of insane. There's many different aspects. For me, I've never really had a life of abundance. So I never really got used to certain lifestyle. I come from a pretty poor background. We were refugees from Bosnia during the war. Moved here when I was 7. And my parents, we've never been well off. And so when I moved out, years ago, I was living with like multiple roommates. First started out with like a really cheap place and a little bit better. But like even at that point in time, my expenses were really low. Like I'm not a person that spends a lot of money on things. I don't know. It's weird. People ask me how I can save money, and I still do stuff. But I always find really good deals on things. And something that I will always, like, for example, snowboarding. Like, I will always make budget for that, for things that I love.
Because you love it.
Exactly. Yeah. But I didn't have a whole lot of expenses at that time, and I did save up a ton of money while working at my job. So I had, just like a company, I had a bunch of runway, basically.
Right.
And I wanted to test this out and see, and I had a really good feeling about the team that we had, that we could make something happen. I don't know if it was going to be that specific project or company, but it felt like we were going to hit gold at some point, basically.
How did you have that confidence in your team?
It almost, like, through a lot of this, it almost felt like a movie.
Really? How so?
Like, there's just certain things that happen that you think to yourself, if there was any other way that this happened, it wouldn't have worked out. But that just kept happening. And so you don't want to get too overconfident, thinking like I'm invincible.
Right.
But sometimes, and I've talked to, for example, James about this, where those are the signs that it's going to work out. And you kind of create those moments through your own effort. So if you are really, really dedicated and like capable, then yes, the successes will come. Sometimes it'll be tomorrow. Sometimes it'll be not for a while. But yeah, I think for us we saw a track record of us being able to excel and succeed in things. We also saw what we were lacking, so that was a fixable thing of being able to learn those things that we were lacking in. And it was just one of those things that we just had a good feeling that it was going to work out, and time after time things just kept landing into place and crazy things would happen and it would work out in our favor, and you just keep going with the momentum, basically. Like, right. Momentum builds more momentum, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And a lot of our energy is all around just saying yes to things, and sometimes it's insane stuff like having to sleep on the couch of a CTO that you're trying to sell to in Norway or something. Like, it's just, yeah, I think it's, as long as you don't put barriers around yourself, I found that was a big thing for me when I was growing up. Was I definitely discounted myself a lot in certain ways. Like, I had major imposter syndrome through my whole degree of like computer science, because I was good at programming, but that was half the battle. The other half was all the math and like the theory and all stuff like that I just get totally lost in. And so I was not amazing in my GPA at all, and I thought, holy shit, did I make a huge mistake here?
Right.
But I just kept going. Like, I don't know, there's no other option. I think it's that immigrant mindset of you set your time and money and resources into this, you're not going to just back out and quit. And I think I pretty much rely on that every single day when I do this startup thing.
that resilience and that continued motivation. Okay, so then how did Arbor come about? So you got these 4 guys, you're in a basement? Is it a classic story?
Yeah, literally in a basement.
Amazing.
Super dusty basement. It was just 4 of us just grinding away for a while. How Arbor came about was, the very first thing we did was, it was an ATP hackathon, and it was right before COVID, like end of February 2020. Wow. And we we got invited to do this hackathon, and it was something about creating a banking app. And we thought to ourselves, all fintech and banking apps seem exactly the same. How can we spice this up a little bit and like actually get our creativity to come through?
Sure.
And so we were kind of playing around with the idea of doing something on the environmental side. One of the guys, Danny, in our group, was taking a course about business, and he said something about, we just started learning about this acronym called ESG. Let's look into this and see if we can use it, plug it in. So we started doing a bunch of research on it. But the funny thing was, we didn't actually even have an idea for the hackathon until, so the kickoff was Friday night at Last Best. And the plan was we were just going to go there, mingle, and then because the thing started at 8 a.m. the next day.
Okay.
And you get 2 drink tickets, and we're like, we're not getting crazy. Like, we're just gonna go and talk to some people and stuff like that. And then, of course, they come to us. This is the second time this has happened, and they say, "Oh yeah, we're not hitting our drink limit at all. It's open bar. We need you guys to drink more." And so, of course, all of us just started. You
just had to help out.
Yeah, clearly. We started drinking pretty heavily, and it was probably 2 a.m. We're just talking to a bunch of people there that are part of this competition. We go back to Ben and Danny's house, start brainstorming an idea till 4 a.m. Show up at this place at 8 a.m. Still no idea. We were playing around with things all day, and it wasn't until 6 p.m. on Saturday that we're like, okay, this is the thing we're going to make, which was this like ESG financial app, and started actually building it all through the night, got about 3 hours of sleep, presented it the next day, and got second place in one VR headset. So that's what I'm talking about, is like, this is the track record that kind of gave me the idea very early on that we could do anything.
Right. It's like the universe is telling you, hey, you guys are on the right path. Just
Pretty
keep
much.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that was the very beginnings of Arbor. At that time, we called the app the stupidest name ever, and it was called Money Tree. But we took that idea, and then in a couple months down the road, we saw that there was this big online competition for Microsoft. Mm-hmm. It was Canada-wide, and it was all about AI. One of them is called Sustainable Economies, was one of the streams, mm-hmm. and we entered that. Refined that same idea. It got way better. It was over a couple months that this whole competition was going. And it ended in the summer. Unfortunately, if it wasn't for COVID, we would have gone to Montreal and gone to the actual. I think it was called C20, was this huge event that was happening, and that's where we would present. And Snoop Dogg was supposed to be there and stuff. Yeah, but COVID kind of crapped all over those plans. So it was all online.
Online, yeah.
And we ended up taking first place, and we beat over 400 different teams across Canada. And that was in the summer. And that's when I knew that we had something on our hands. And when I reached out to James, and that whole kind of thing took off from there.
Yeah. Wow. And so how did that feel when you guys put this together and were like, oh my gosh, this is actually making sense? And especially when you start winning these competitions, how did you know, okay, this is it, we got to keep pushing on this?
You don't really ever know. But it just felt right. I tell people this, that since I left my job at the UFC and we started our very first company and we're just starting this entrepreneurship thing to now, and even continuing now till hopefully the foreseeable future, I've never once looked at the clock during a workday.
Really?
I've never thought of it as work. People get worried about, Monday's coming and I don't want to go back to work. And it's not that I want to just work all the time. It's just that it's indifferent to me.
Right.
I enjoy what I do.
You love it that much.
So it's not something that it's stressful, but it's not something that I look at with disdain of wanting to go back, having to go back to whatever it is. And I didn't know if it was going to work, but I knew that I loved it like a lot, and I couldn't see myself going back. Yeah. And even now we discuss what happens if Arbor just tanks or if we get acquired or something. We'd probably just start another company the next day. Right,
because you love it that much.
I don't see another option for me. Or I would join a team that I thought that they had something incredibly special that I really believed in, or whatever it is.
So how important is that to you, to work on something that you deeply believe in, that you know is special?
Really important. I found the difference between just my outlook on life and how much I enjoy life. When I really enjoy what I do in a career perspective versus when I don't is night and day difference. Mm-hmm. I've worked in jobs that I didn't really care about and just not happy at all. And then something that I actually really care about, it's just a huge difference maker. And it has to be there now. I've realized it's a big part of my life.
Yeah. Is it a motivator for you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I have the ability to make an impact on people or the world or within the company or whatever it is, it makes me really motivated to go above and beyond, mm-hmm. to see the actual effects of my work. If I can't see the actual effects of my work or be able to help make decisions or whatever it is, it just feels like I'm just tossing my effort into a void and not really getting anything back, basically.
Yeah. Okay, let's dig into this notion. You mentioned this briefly, but let's go into that a little deeper. You said, oh, well, then I just, called up James. Okay, like, that's kind of nuts, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't just call up James Lockery, So how did you decide you were going to do that? Or did you even think about it? Like, how did that come about?
I think I've just had this ability to not see people as their status, but people as people. And so when I communicate with people, I don't really get nervous about who they are or what they are or whatever. It's just any other person to me. And I remember I had a really good conversation with James over the phone at one point because he was trying to help me with some stuff that I was trying to push through at the UFC. He seemed like a very down-to-earth person. We connected really well off that 1 hour that we talked on the phone. And so I had his email, and I sent him an email, and it was basically just me asking if I could just hop on a call with him to learn about how he did wave, because it was mainly to understand from a perspective of someone that's gone through from literally a napkin drawing of an idea to building it out, to acquiring customers, to getting acquired, to selling, kind of thing. He had that whole range of experience. And in the email specifically, I said, I'm not looking for money. I just want to learn. Do you have time or whatever? Totally get if you don't, but it would be great if we could hop on a call. And I remember distinctly people telling me, being like, oh, James is really hard to get a hold of because he's super busy. Don't really expect much. And he responded within half an hour. Remembered who I was, and we talked on the phone. And my goal still, like, I didn't even know if he was an investor or investing or anything at the time. I just knew of him as the guy that I identified who could teach me a lot about this space. And I also just wanted to run the idea by someone who had the experience or expertise to say, like, this is really dumb or there's potential. For my own sanity check, right? Because you always need a sanity check, and you cannot be so married to the thing that you're doing that you ignore all signs, because that happens a lot. People think that their idea is worth gold when it's actually not, and then they ruin their lives trying to push this thing that is impossible to push, basically, or just no one wants it, kind of thing. So I needed someone to just tell me straight up, is this interesting, or could this be something at some point, or am I just wasting my time, basically?
Right. So that strikes me as something that's kind of scary to do, though, to kind of, if you put all your blood, sweat, and tears into this thing, and then you're just like, okay, you're really smart, and you've done this before, James, can you just tell me if I've lost my mind or not? That seems a little terrifying to me. How did you do that? I
think at that time we were so malleable, but we still are, but we weren't. For example, if that app that we had made so long ago, if that wasn't it, we would have just dropped it and done the next thing.
Right.
It wasn't at a point where we were so ingrained and so attached to something. We really liked the idea and we thought there was a lot of value in it, but we also knew that what we were doing was really new and it was going to be a bet. It was going to be replacing a bet if essentially people were going to give more shit about the planet than they did at that point in time. And what we were seeing was a trend, an increasing trend of people caring more about the environment and asking questions, and there being a lack of transparency in data and stuff like that. And we were just kind of betting on that increase. And I think I explained that the same way to James, who also saw that happening. But at the end of the day, if it wasn't going to work out, we would have just hopped onto something else, basically. Because the ideas side and like the execution of it wasn't something I was worried about for us at all. I feel like we could execute on anything.
Wow. That gives you a lot of confidence.
A lot of confidence, yeah.
To keep going. That's amazing. Okay, now we all know, though, you've talked about these wonderful signs, from the universe telling you that you're on the right track. There's also signs, though, when someone comes to you and says, I just don't get it. I don't think it's going to work.
It's on a daily with me.
Right? It happens all the time. I hear this over and over again from founders. So, I mean, how do you deal with that?
So what I actually have started also telling other founders, and what I've kind of learned over time and have been told, is everyone's got their opinion, everyone's got feedback. You listen, but ultimately it's up to you as the founder of like how you're going to utilize that feedback. Yeah. You are the only one that knows the business in and out and knows the real opportunity, because you're in it every single day. Mm-hmm. Now, my biggest mantra of everything is balance. There's a balance to everything. You need to be confident in your idea, and you need to be opportunistic and hopeful, but to an extent. You can't be blind. If you're the only one that gets it and you find no one else that gets it, that's a problem. Right. If you have an idea and you think it's amazing, but you haven't done any research into what is offered right now, that's a problem, because maybe most likely it already exists, or maybe it's oversaturated, or whatever it is. There's people in our space especially have constantly been telling us, who gives a shit? Like, why is this important? Right. And all those things. And had it not changed, that trend that I was talking about increased and continued to increase for the past 2 years, I would have agreed, and we would have been essentially changed to something else or whatever it is, or cut our losses. But I know that from the conversations that I have, who are the key stakeholders in these things that we're working with, like the consumers, the customers, the businesses, the governments. I mean, you can't open up anything nowadays without someone dropping the sustainability bomb, basically. Yeah. And right now, honestly, it's all just talk. Like, everyone's trying to just fit in and talk and speak the same language. There's very little action, and very soon that switch is going to flip, basically, because all the talk is going to need to lead to credible, real action, basically, that you do as a business or a government or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And we're just waiting for that moment where we have some early adopters, the leaders. We have to find those people, and it's wading through disqualifying who is not a prospect and who is a prospect, whatever. It's both the investor and the customer side. But yeah, we get that a lot. It's funny because when I go traveling, for example, right? You go through customs, and it's the weirdest thing. When I talk to the border security, they're always like, "What do you do?" Yeah. And I explain, and it turns into a 10-minute conversation. I feel like I'm at Shark Tank, because they're like,
pitching the services guy.
Like, well, do people really care about this stuff? And then I have to explain, well, some do, some don't, but it's becoming a bigger thing. And then they'll be like, yeah, I'm just not seeing it. And I was like, yeah, that's fair. You know what? It's whatever. Or like an Uber driver will ask me or whatever it is, and the same kind of thing. Like, I don't really think people care about this. I'm like, well, your viewpoint on this is tiny, right? But there's also the bigger picture that you're not seeing, because you don't live in this world. You're not in this space. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, it's all about just essentially understanding your space really well, and just seeing that the trend, the growth of adoption, but being realistic. Like, if you're just smashing your head into a wall over and over again and just not learning your lesson, that will ultimately just drag you into some space that you can maybe knock it out of, or whatever it is. Right. Cool.
Okay, the other thing that comes up all the time when I'm talking to founders is that they'll say, oh gosh, this thing is just keeping me up at night. This thing wakes me up in the middle of the night and I can't go back to sleep. This has got to happen to you. What keeps you up in the middle of the night these days? I bet that's changed over time.
It does change. I think like there's, maybe not for everybody, I would say most founders have that fear of, no matter how awesome things are going or how great the opportunity looks or whatever it is, I don't know how to explain this. My mind works in a way where it's always thinking about the next thing, and whatever achievements that I've done kind of just get filed away, not thought about within that day.
That day.
So some milestone will hit or something, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, trust me, but I tend to just always think, what's the next thing? Okay, we just achieved this, great, whatever, I'm over it. What's the next thing? And sometimes when you don't have those wins for a long time, which you probably won't, those thoughts start creeping in, which is like, holy shit, is this going to fail? Or what's going to happen? Or how can I do a better job? Or what am I not doing? Whatever it is. And I say the recurring, I don't know if it's like a recurring nightmare, but it is a nightmare thought that I have, which is if somehow, and which is a very slim chance that this would ever happen, but like, let's say our company goes under and I have to write out that email to all the people that invested money and be like, we screwed up, like your money's gone, we didn't do anything, basically. That's probably the biggest kind of like, it's not a fear that I think about all the time, but that's that moment where sometimes it'll just pop in your head when you're about to go to bed and your eyes are just wide open and you're just thinking about this for a while, and that's, yeah.
Okay, so your eyes are wide open and you're lying in bed. How do you get to sleep? Like, how do you work through that feeling?
That's when you have to think about what is coming ahead. So you have to think about, okay, well, for example, we're talking to some of the biggest companies in the world, and we've signed MOUs with them and things like that. And for me, I have to bring it back to thinking about these companies that are this behemoth level. They don't just do that for anybody. Yeah. And so it clearly means something that this tiny ass startup is getting into the room with these massive companies, talking to their chief left and right. And that must mean something. That means that we have built something that's important, that's valuable, and is only increasing in value, basically. Right. And so those are the thoughts that I'm like, okay, we're not going to fail, just relax, like chill out. It is that thing of Rome wasn't built in a day. I think I get very frustrated when things don't move quickly. Right. And I just want it to happen like now. Because there is a lot of pressure on you. Sure. But sometimes I even think about it, and in my own brain, if I ask myself, if we went from 0 to an established company and 400, 500 people, well, where's the fun in that? That's the end game, and that's when the fun is dead, basically. Right. The fun part is that small, scrappy journey of going through it that is going to be stressful, but it's also, you're going to look back at it and you'll be thinking about how much you missed that and you want to go back to that. Totally. Yeah.
Let's talk about that in terms of just even building your team, right? So, I mean, you guys started as 4 guys in a basement. You had to grow from there. What's that like? You're the CEO. What's that like going, okay, we need to hire somebody. We need to have this person come on the team and say, I'm going to work for you. You have to pay them a salary. You have to keep paying them a salary. Yeah. What's that like?
Yeah, hiring is crazy. Some roles, pretty easy to hire for because you can vet people pretty easily. Other roles, you're just taking a gamble. It's like, I'll give you specifics, tech-related roles, you can test them out and get a pretty good sense. For us, a lot of it comes down to the culture fit. Mm-hmm. It's not so much that we're looking for someone and again, when you grow to a certain size, you can't really just look at culture fit only. You have to look at, like, they might not be someone that you want to hang out with, but they are an extremely talented dev or something like that you need. But at this point in time, we needed to maintain our culture because you need to build that base foundation, because the people that you hire early on are the future leaders of the company. So you need them to be instilled with the same spirit and drive of the founders in the company and as a whole to maintain that cohesiveness, basically. And so we honestly, the mission that our company has resonates with people a lot, especially younger people in like, you know, early 20s, early 30s. They just get really attracted to what we're doing, and sometimes they'll work for a lower salary. Sometimes they really just want to change from their mundane job to something that they care more about, and they see that future value. So like stock options are a great benefit for them. But it is really tough to be able to discern who will have that mindset of a startup and who won't. And there's two types of people. Neither one is wrong or right, but it's just different fits. One is the person that excels in a situation where they have a lot of guidance and things are kind of in a box. So like, my day looks like this, and pretty much almost every day looks like this, and I execute on these tasks.
Right.
And the other side is the people that, being in a box, they hate that.
Right.
And they want every day or week to look totally different, or just, I don't know, be let loose basically to figure out what to do. And those are the people that in early stage startups you need, basically, because your roles are going to be they need to be malleable, they need to change, they need to, sometimes maybe someone starts as a dev and they end up in sales or marketing somehow because they just really have a knack for it, or someone that's in marketing ends up becoming your main designer. It's just, that's how, and they're excited about those things, opportunities. There's nowhere else that you can have that kind of flexibility and be able to experience different things all the time. But for some people, it's very scary and just seems chaotic and disorganized. But to others, that looks like a controlled environment that's part of the whole point, basically.
Right. Wow. Yeah, there is a certain personality type, isn't there? Yeah, for sure. I've seen that too. Speaking of personality types, you've got the four of you. That's not always how it goes. Sometimes there's only, one founder or co-founder, but there's four of you guys. How do you guys sort of stay together, stay in lines, keep working on the same mission, and get along, frankly?
I would say it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare that all founders, let alone four founders, continue to provide required skills to the company as the company evolves. We all just we're very similar, but also very different in what we do and how we do it. Not to say though that everything has always been sunshine and rainbows,
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like the beauty of it has been that let's say something goes wrong, I'll sit us down and just really get into it.
What does that look like?
I mean, I'm usually a pretty normal, calm, relaxed person, but it takes a lot for me to get annoyed and mad, but only the founders will see that side.
Right.
And all of us, we have to be able to vent this out and lay everything out, because otherwise you get into that zone of resentment, basically, and you don't want to be in that, where you're not talking about what you actually want or feel or whatever it is. But what's happened every single time is right afterwards, you just solve all your problems and everything feels great.
Wow.
So you have to be able to dig that out and lay it all out on the table, and be open and honest with everyone. And you can't get personally hurt by things.
Right.
At the end of the day, everyone wants what's best for the business, and you will have to, that's the thing that you align on. That's your North Star. And so if everyone truly believes that, then you will come to a solution that everyone agrees on. We also really early on made it so that because there's four of us, you can easily have a 50-50 split.
Oh, yeah.
So we made it so that I, as a CEO, get the ultimate decision making if we're at an impasse or whatever it is. But that's my skill set, is just looking at the facts really quickly and analyzing and making decisions, and knowing how to move out of decisions, and knowing when, let's say we make a decision and we quickly figure out that it's not the right one. That's a skill set in itself. Knowing when to pull back, basically, and go to a different route as soon as possible when you have the actual data and the knowledge. But yeah, I think for us, it's like I said, it's not always sunshine and rainbows, but we always have that home base to return to, which we all really respect each other. And out of that respect is going to come some hard truth sometimes. And you just can't take it personally.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, you just touched on this, but again, I've heard this so many times from founders. You have to be able to pivot when you get the information that you're going down the path that's not quite right. And you have to do that little turn or that shift, or maybe sometimes it's a big turn and a big shift. How do you get your head around that?
I think it goes back to that you just can't be married to your ideas. It's that classic thing of customers always right. I worked in customer service jobs and I thought it was the stupidest slogan ever. It's like, customers don't know shit. They don't have no idea what they're talking about. But it's essentially, if you're building something and you're the person you're building it for, that's the fastest way to fail. Because you don't know what the problem is. You don't know what people are actually going to pay you for until you go talk to them and find out. And so if you need to pivot on your product, maybe it's a small pivot of feature sets or whatever it is, or like we had to pivot from doing a consumer-facing app that we launched as a browser extension and we raised our whole entire pre-seed round on. But we knew at some point that as we were going through, we knew that we needed to switch to business because the impact wasn't going to be the same. It took way too much money marketing-wise. We didn't spend any money, but we could see that it could take a lot of marketing money. You're fighting against massive companies that already have a stranglehold on consumers. So we found out that the fastest way, the most economical way would be to go to the source, which was go to these straight to the business and use our product to help them become more sustainable, not consumers become more sustainable. But then if the business is more sustainable, then consumers become more sustainable because they're buying things from a more sustainable business. So that was the whole goal, was to move towards a data-centric company, not necessarily doing a B2C app. That was really just a proof of concept. But even if it wasn't, you have to look at what's going to get you to your goals the fastest way. And you just can't take anything personally. Like it's
right.
If you've designed and built something and you're going to talking to customers and they're like, well, I don't want that. You have to figure out what they want, and you can't look at them and be like, well, you're an idiot for not wanting this. Because they're the ones that have the money that they need to pay you with.
Right.
And if you can't convince them to pay you for this thing, then you don't have a good product.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, you talked a little bit about this, but as the CEO, you've got to do lots of things, and you've got to build teams and build products and do all the things, but you also have to raise money.
Yeah.
So let's talk just a little bit. You just looked aside and looked down. What's that like? How do you get the confidence up to go pitch this company in front of these incredible investors that you really need that money from over and over and over again? How do you do it?
I mean, there's like a version of this where I speak my mind. There's a version of this where I water it down. Which one would you prefer?
It's up to you, man.
So when I started out first, when we first got our investors, like even with James and Thin Air, I thought they were my bosses.
Right.
Because you don't know any better. And
right.
So they'll send you suggestions and you think that you have to do it.
Yeah.
Quickly, I found out that that's not the case at all, and you're supposed to treat your investors basically like employees. They're there as a resource for you, and you need to point them in the direction of how can they help you, basically. And once I figured that out, it became more of like we're on a level playing field. Maybe it goes back to that thing that I was talking about, where I'm not intimidated by people's money or status. I just talk to them as if I were to talk to anybody. And I think that's something that I feel like all founders should be able to do or should do. But once I kind of figured that out, I would just take investor meetings left, right, and center, and you're just talking to a person who is pretty much just deploying capital to buy into a business that you're doing all the hard work in.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not saying that their jobs aren't hard. I'm just saying that it's kind of, if there's a really good company, it's kind of a privilege to invest into the company because you're not executing, you're deploying capital, and these founders are working their asses off to build something spectacular, and you're helping out, you're along for the ride, whatever it is. But I do feel a lot of founders have it the other way around, where they get scared or they feel like they're on like a lower level, and so they don't push back on investors, or they don't showcase that they have, I don't know, sometimes it's like even talking to people in a certain way, in a more assertive way, shows them, makes them respect you more, because they're like, oh, wow.
You do know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and this is an actual CEO of a company. I trust and believe that this person can actually lead a team. Whereas if you're, yes, sir, okay, sorry, sir, like it's not gonna do you very well to showcase your leadership, basically.
Right. Amazing. Okay, I've taken up a lot of your time, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just to wrap this up. This has been really interesting, and I love this. Thank you in advance for sharing all of this. What do you want people to understand about what it's like to be a founder?
I think it's that piece of what I was talking about. It's nothing's built in a day. And so in this world, everyone loves you when you've got announcements to make, and when you're not making announcements, no one gives a shit about you.
So get used to it.
Get used to it. But it's also, I think it's if something, let's say a company has to go through, like if they have to downsize, or they didn't get this deal, or if they if something happened that wasn't according to plan. I'm doing air quotes because there isn't really most of the time there isn't a plan.
There isn't a plan, yeah.
But maybe on the outside it looks like it's a chaotic mess or whatever it is. It's not. It's all part of just moving forward and figuring out, and trial and error, basically. And so sometimes I'll talk to investors or organization people that aren't founders, and I'll tell them something and they'll panic, like, whoa, why did you just tell me that? That's crazy. Yeah. Like all of a sudden I don't believe in your company as much. But if you're talking to someone who has done this, like James, for example, and he's like, oh yeah, I don't give a shit. That's like, that happened to us so many times. This is nothing. Like this is just a small stepping stone along the journey. And so there's a total difference in understanding there. And a lot of times my blood pressure is a lot less with one conversation than it is with another conversation.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that would be the one where it's just know that there's way more to the picture than what you're seeing from the outside. And a lot of times there's probably a lot of crazy, awesome things happening. But you will only know that they're awesome if you are living in it every single day. So just because this company hasn't made, and I'm not saying this is like a personal thing for us, but I see this happen a lot across the whole ecosystem. And just because a company hasn't made an announcement in a while, whatever it is, doesn't mean that they aren't doing anything, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. So if we're looking down the road, how would you like the story of Arbor to go, or to end, or to keep going?
Ideally, I mean, I'm starting to see how to explain this. My mind has always been very much around, like, I hate using political terms, but it's like a socialist mindset, I guess. I'm both kind of like both on socialism and capitalism side, but I've always looked at companies and CEOs. I'm like, holy shit, why do they make so much money? And like, why do we need to have billionaires? Like, shouldn't exist, honestly. And I still think that, but I'm starting to understand why, let's say, a CEO could only do this for 10 years, or why they get paid a lot sometimes. There's obviously balance to everything, but some of the things that you have to make decisions on and do and execute on, like, you're the face and your ass is on the line. If a company goes under, they're not going to be looking at the CTO and being like, oh man, this guy, like we're going to talk about him in the news. No, it's the CEO that's going to have his face or her face plastered everywhere and then be talked about. And so there's a lot that's riding on your shoulders. And a lot of things that you do, like my job, I almost do everything all at once. And so sometimes you're doing legal stuff, sometimes you're doing sales stuff, sometimes you're doing investments, sometimes you're doing product and development and all these things like that. You don't have a cohesive job structure, which sucks sometimes. You wish that you could just focus on one thing and have that be your thing that you see demonstrable progress. Sometimes as a CEO, you'll work on things and it'll be months and it feels like nothing has moved. And it can suck a lot, right? So for us, I could see there's kind of two pathways. One is we get tired of this and at some point hand over the reins through getting acquired or whatever it is. The other one is we continue, like I have aspirations to build us up into a Google-sized company. Just the amount of opportunity there is with what we're doing, becoming a massive data company isn't out of the question. It's not really like a if, it's a when and how long and do we have it in us to go through all of that and all those journeys. And even the guys who found Google at some point just left because they just can't handle it anymore. But ideally, I would like to be part of the journey and maintain as much control as we can to make sure that what we're doing is done correctly, that the impact is there. We're not just talking about reducing emissions, we're actually reducing emissions. We're not just doing some greenwashing marketing bullshit. We're actually leading to a human impact that's measurable, that changes people's lives for the better, basically. And I feel like if we let go of the reins too early, I don't trust the people that come in to achieve that goal. So, yeah.
Alex, thank you for this.
No worries. Thank you for having me. Appreciate you listening to ramble about
I love it.
all my crazy ideas.
Innovative ideas are just that, ideas, until they have the right kind of backing to make them a reality. Enter the Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. Established by the City of Calgary to attract investment, drive innovation, and stimulate economic development, it gives innovators the launchpad they need to take flight. After all, there's a reason opportunity is in its name. By supporting public and private organizations that help grow Calgary's economy, it's creating opportunities for everyone to reach new heights. Find out more at opportunitycalgary.com.